So we all know that preparation is half the battle when it comes to job interviews. And in my opinion, knowing where to start is the very first step. Today, I'm going to be walking you through the program management interview process at Google, Facebook, Meta, Apple, and Amazon. Welcome to the Pocketboard channel, where accomplished industry mentors share their hard-earned lessons learned, guidance, and mentorship to help you navigate your current professional goals. I'm Erika, and I'm the founder of Pocketboard. I'm also a career and interview coach, and I was formerly a hiring manager at Google. I love educating and coaching people about the FAANG interview process because when I got my job at Google over 10 years ago, it changed the entire trajectory of my career, and I love giving that same gift to other people. I've been on the other side of the table at least 1,000 times. I've learned what works and what doesn't work when it comes to program management interviews. I myself have hired dozens of program managers, and I've coached over 100 people who are trying to get jobs at FAANG companies in program management roles. I have a lot of great information that I'm excited to share with you today. So first, I want to start by what program managers do, and this is not going to be an in-depth tutorial, just as a quick note in case you're on this page and you're not sure if you're going to be interviewing for a program management role or a technical program management role, or maybe a product manager role, or maybe a technical product manager role. So I do have a video that I'm going to link above that actually talks about the difference between program management, technical program management, and product management at FAANG companies. So if you're looking into that, that's a great video to check out. But if you're here because you already know that you're interviewing as a program manager, something you should know about program managers at FAANG companies is that their roles are highly varied. To me, program managers tend to be kind of like the glue of an organization. In most of the FAANG companies, program managers do what I call strategic operations. So what that translates into is things we've never really done before that no one else is responsible for or probably wants to do. So because of the variability that comes with program management roles, there's a lot of variability in the actual roles that you might be interviewing for. That's just kind of a caveat going into this. But because we're talking about FAANG program management, the interview processes across all of the different FAANG companies for program managers will be very similar. So today I'm going to focus on the general program management interview processes at FAANG companies, and I'm going to tell you when there's differences between certain companies, one or the other, so that you're getting the most relevant information to you if you're interviewing at just one of the FAANG companies. All right, let's dive right in. First step is to apply, get recruited, or get referred. This is just your top of funnel. You got to get into the hiring process. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is apply, but that also tends to have the highest rejection rate. The easiest thing from an effort perspective is to apply. The hardest thing from a probability perspective is to get recruited. So I don't know about you, but I always get recruited when I don't want a job. And then when I do want a job, no recruiters are calling me. So trying to bet on how to get recruited in is probably not the highest probability thing. So I'm going to focus on how to apply and how to get referred. Referrals tend to be a little bit higher effort, but they always result in a human looking at your application. And ultimately, that is what we want. So if you're applying for a big tech company, you probably know robots do a lot of work. And there's a lot of automation in the hiring process because you're talking about some of the pickiest employers in the world. So in order to handle the high volume of applicants, they do have a lot of automation that's happening in the background where effectively algorithms are deciding whether you move forward in the process. I don't know about you. I prefer that a human looks at my application. So if that is you and you would rather a human look at your application, I recommend that you not cold apply. Cold applying will probably result in a lot of rejection emails. Those will all be, for the most part, automated and not actually from a human. If you want a human to review your application, you need to get referred. Every single referral is reviewed. So what if I don't know anyone at Google? What if I don't know anyone at Facebook? No problem. Obviously, referrals from people that have worked with you in the past are the best types of referrals, but not everyone has that kind of network. And if all of these FAANG companies relied on all of us to have those kind of networks, they would have a very big diversity problem. They do have a very big diversity problem. A topic for another video. Okay, so you want to get referred and you don't know anyone at these companies, or the people that you know maybe aren't willing to refer you. That's fine. There are so many ways in today's day and age to get random strangers on the internet who work at these companies to refer you. Remember, they get paid if you get hired. So there's a lot of mercenary folks out there that are happy to give you a referral so that you get a guaranteed human eyeball on your application in exchange for a very low probability chance that they get a payout, okay? So that's boiling it down to nuts and bolts. There's a lot more wonderful, generous people out there that are willing to really get to know you, to give you tips and help you and give advice. But generally speaking, you can probably find a stranger on the internet in various forums. I'll mention a few here, but there's a lot of different ways to get people to help you. One way is to post on a subreddit that focuses on that company or those types of roles. Another way is to go to teamblind.com, and post in their forum and ask someone to refer you to a role. Note that there are some social expectations around using Team Blind, and so you try to follow the community guidelines and expectations, some of which are written down and some of which aren't, if you want to avoid getting trolly answers. And then, of course, there's Glassdoor and any Facebook or other kind of groups, Slack groups that you're a part of in the job hunting community. Just feel comfortable. It's okay to get a stranger to refer you. It doesn't affect the caliber of your application. It doesn't affect the likelihood you're going to get the job, and for better or for worse, but it does ensure that a human eyeball looks at your application. Step 1A, the waiting game. For most people, the waiting game is the hardest part, but I just want to tell you what's happening in the background so that you're aware of what's actually happening inside the company while you have gotten referred or you've applied and you haven't heard back. So in general, when it takes time to get a response, that's actually a good thing. If the robots wanted to reject you, they would do it very, very quickly. There's a lot of compute power behind those robots, and you would be getting a rejection email within 15 minutes or even a day if it was an automated process. So because you've got human eyeballs on your application, it's going to take a little bit of time, just like the rest of us. I got a lot of stuff on my desk right now that's just like in the waiting queue. That's exactly how a recruiter's desk looks. They got a lot of people they're helping at one time. Having time between when you apply and hearing back is actually a signal that there's thought and intention going into your application review. So be patient during the waiting game. Be confident that someone is actually looking at your application. If it has been more than 2 weeks, that's a fairly long period of time. You may still get a response, but it is more likely to be a rejection than a move forward in the process if it has taken more than 2 weeks. Anything between 0 days and 2 weeks is fair game for response time. So give yourself that much time before you start to assume that there's nothing happening or that you're not moving forward. All right, let's say you make it past the waiting game and now you are in step 2, the recruiter screen. So recruiter screens are typically 15 to 30 minutes. What's going to happen is the recruiter is going to email you. Maybe they've LinkedIn email you, but they're going to set up a time with you to talk. And in that time, they're going to be in information gathering mode. The recruiter is going to ask you, tell me about yourself, or tell me about your past experience, or why are you a good fit for the job? They're going to ask these questions because they're trying to understand if your resume matches your actual experience. I have an entire video about how to answer, tell me about yourself, and why do you want to work at this company? I will link it above, and you can check it out after you watch this video. The second thing that the recruiter is going to be asking you about in this conversation is around compensation expectations. When you get asked about your compensation expectations, it may be in this recruiter screen, it may be downstream, but you will get asked. And your answer is never going to be a number. It's never going to be a number, and it's never going to be a range of numbers. You should avoid at all costs talking about compensation until you have an offer. If you get asked about your compensation expectations, share with them the criteria that you're using to assess job opportunities. So maybe that's the team, maybe that's the product, maybe that's the impact, maybe it's a combination of all of them, and express to the recruiter that those are the things that you're trying to gather in the interview process and that you're happy to talk about compensation as an offer becomes more imminent. There are a lot of great resources on the internet about how to handle this conversation, but I find that so many candidates go into that recruiter screen being completely unaware that they're going to be asked about compensation, and so they end up blurting out something that they're going to regret later, because this is step 1 in the negotiation process. Follow my advice and do not share numbers when you're asked about compensation. Secondly, you should ask about the compensation bands for the role. In the state of California, employers are actually required to provide the compensation bands for the role if the candidate asks. So when you ask for the compensation bands, they may not have them on hand. They may say, I'll email it to you. They may say, well, I'll follow up in a conversation, no problem. But you've asked for them. And so the majority of employers will provide those to you. The third thing that the recruiters are looking for in your recruiter phone screen is red flags. I actually call this entire interview a red flag interview because it's not a real interview in the sense that it's pretty permissive. Most people make it through the recruiter screen and go on to their first actual skill-based screen. Recruiter screens are looking for red flags. Like, are you even interested in getting a job? Are you in the compensation range that's reasonable for this role? Are you a jerk? Are you actually the person that your resume says? Do you actually have that experience? Those are the red flags that they are looking for. If any of those is off, you may not move forward in the process. There's other reasons you may not move forward in the process too. So for those who have experience not moving forward off the recruiter screen, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're, fraudulently presenting your experience or that your compensation is way off or that you're not actively looking for a job or that you're a jerk. It could be that the job actually just gets closed for whatever reason or other factors that are outside of your control. But I generally tell people, don't think about this as an interview. This is really a screen to understand if you're generally primed and ready to move forward into the next step of the process where we're actually assessing your skills and fit for the role. Another thing to know about recruiters is that, like every job, they have performance expectations. For recruiters, their performance expectations are around how robustly they can build a funnel of qualified candidates and ultimately how many candidates they can get through and hired at that company. So you have to realize that that is an incentive alignment that is magical. Your recruiter wants you to get the job, you want to get the job. That is a match made in heaven. So treat your recruiter at every step of the way except offer negotiation. Treat them like they are your partner in crime. Give them the information they need to be useful to you. Send them little tidbits, thank you notes, ask clarifying questions, ask them if they can give you any hints about the interview process. They want you to get the job almost as much as you want to get the job, so use them. The last note that I'll make about recruiters, which all of my recruiter friends and former colleagues will be really upset about, is just something that I have observed both as a candidate and as a coach who helps candidates, is that recruiters, majority of their work tends to be concentrated in the middle of the week. That's when most people make themselves available for interviews. And so when they have the opportunity to take off a Monday or a Friday, they tend to take those days off. So one of the things that I'm going to share with you, and this is really to set your expectations as a candidate, when you send your recruiter, like you have your interviews on Thursday and you send them a bunch of information Thursday night, they may have Friday off. They may have Monday off. So when you're panicking on Tuesday because you haven't heard back from them in 3 days, it could be for a litany of reasons that have nothing to do with whether or not you're doing well in the process. So it could be that the recruiter is taking off a Monday or a Friday. Could be that they're taking off both. Could be that they're waiting for feedback. They don't want to mislead you in the process. They want to create a great candidate experience for you, which includes giving you new information every time they chat with you. So their response times are fabulous in the middle of the week. If you are communicating with your recruiters at the end of the week and they don't get back to you, don't panic and don't email them 30 times. Let them respond to you when they have new information. All right, so you've passed your recruiter screen. You're moving into step 3, the hiring manager screen. The reason I'm using air quotes when I talk about hiring managers is that sometimes you're not actually interviewing with your hiring manager, but you may be interviewing with a hiring manager who is calibrated, who knows the expectations for the role. It's called a hiring manager screen, but you're not always actually interviewing with the hiring manager. And this is your actual first real interview. And by real interview, I mean this is the first time your skills are being assessed and signal is being gathered to understand whether or not we are going to give you an offer. So you should definitely prepare for these interviews. I have a ton of videos about how to prepare, how to research the company, the industry, the role, even the people that are interviewing you, how to really prepare in depth for interviews when you actually want to get the job. So check those videos out. I will try to link them here if I remember. If I'm pointing at nothing right now, then just check the videos on the Pocketboard channel and you should be able to find those. So logistics on the hiring manager screen. So at Google and Facebook/Meta, these are going to be 45 minutes long. They're going to be on the phone, so no video. At Apple, they're going to be 30 minutes long, and they're also going to be on the phone. And if it's Amazon, these are actually going to usually be an hour long, and they'll usually be on their Chime video conferencing system. So the anatomy of a hiring manager screen starts with an intro. Usually the person who is interviewing is trying to make you feel comfortable, set the stage for a great conversation, help you get rid of some of your, nervous energy by telling you about themselves, the role, the team, the product, anything that they have that will help provide context for the interview. And then they want to dive right in because they need to get a lot of signal in a very short period of time. So the bulk of the interview, whether that's the 25 minutes that remains if you're at Apple, the 55 minutes that remains if you're at Amazon, or the 40 minutes that remains if you're at Google or Meta, you're getting asked back-to-back questions about your background, about your experience, about times that you've experienced experience X, Y, or Z so that you can share more information that converts into signal that allows the interviewer to decide if you have the skills and competencies for the role. And then at the end of every interview, you're usually given 3 to 5 minutes at the end for you to ask questions. I'm linking a video up here. I actually have 2 different videos, but I'm linking one of them about how to formulate amazing questions for your interviewers. And I highly suggest that you watch these videos and actually formulate some questions so that you can stand out from other candidates. It's usually a little bit less at Apple because they have shorter interviews. So zooming in on that middle part of the interview, the part where you are actually being asked questions in rapid fire and you're answering them. The DNA of a typical hiring manager screen is going to be a mix of tell me about yourself type questions where it's kind of free form and you're expressing your background and experiences. Usually that's a starter question. Also, why do you want to work as a program manager at this company? So those are 2 questions you want to prepare for. I've already linked that video, but it's easy to find. The other types of questions you're going to be getting asked in this very first interview are actual questions about specific scenarios that you've experienced in your career so the interviewer can understand how your skills match up to the required skills for this role. At Google, we call these skills role-related knowledge and skills, and there are about 9 of them for program managers. And each of those skills typically corresponds to 1 or 2 questions that you're going to get asked, where they're asking a specific question that points at that specific skill. You don't know that it's that skill, but they know that that's the skill that they're assessing for. You're going to give a story from your background. Behavioral questions are the heart and soul of every FAANG interview. So make sure you watch videos on how to answer behavioral questions. It starts with the STAR method, but I've actually implemented improvements to the STAR method that will preempt any follow-up questions from your interviewers that will show that you have a growth mindset, that you're a lean, green, learning machine. So you should follow the STAR++ method that is in the video that I just linked. So the majority of the questions are going to be, tell me about a time when, or what's your general process for doing XYZ. Both times you're going to use the STAR++ behavioral question answering framework. And it's going to show them that you've experienced these types of things, that you've mastered this skill, that you've driven results while learning and becoming a better version of yourself and a better program manager. Obviously, if there's 9 role-related knowledge and skills, there's absolutely no way you can fit 9 questions and answers into a 30, 45, or even 1 hour long hiring manager screen. So at this point, we have enough signal to decide if we want to move forward and bring you in for a final round interview. After the hiring manager screen, you are going to wait a few days. The recruiter is going to gather the feedback from that interviewer, and they're going to decide one of 3 things. One outcome is you're moving forward in the process. Congratulations, you're moving to final rounds. The second potential outcome is, I'm sorry, but you are not moving forward in the process. We were not able to get the signal that we wanted, and we encourage you to reapply in 6 or 12 months. And then the third outcome is, hey, we had a great interview with you. We weren't able to get strong enough signals. Would you be okay with doing a second phone screen? So I'm going to talk about that second phone screen process next, but the majority of people will get outcome 1 or outcome 2. Yes, you're moving forward, or no, you're not moving forward. A quick caveat before I dive into what the second screen looks like. If you're interviewing at Amazon, you will have a second screen regardless. And from what I can tell, for the most part, Apple tends to do 2 phone screens before moving into the final round process. But at Google and Meta, it tends to be 1 unless they didn't get enough signal. All right, so you're one of these lucky people that moves into step 4, where you have a second phone screen. If you're at Amazon, you're definitely doing this. If you're Apple, you're probably doing this. And if you're at Facebook or Meta, you're unlikely to do this unless it is necessary. They follow the same structure as the hiring manager interview that we just talked about. 30 minutes for Apple, an hour for Amazon, and 45 minutes for Google or Meta. It's a very similar structure. A couple of minutes at the beginning for intros, a couple minutes at the end for you to ask questions, which you should prepare for. And then the entire middle of the sandwich is you getting asked questions about your background and experience, scenarios you've encountered, and how you generally go about doing the job that you're interviewing for. Not much else to say here, except that the response process is exactly the same. The interviewer has 48 hours to get back and provide a score on the signal for the interview, at which point the recruiter will reach out to you. General rules of patience apply here. If you haven't heard back in 5 business days, it's fine to reach out to your recruiter. Try to avoid nagging them. Anything sooner than 2 days after the interview is too soon to follow up with your recruiter and ask them how things are going. Of course, between the interview and then, you're welcome to send a thank you note to the recruiter, which will then get forwarded on to the person that interviewed you. All right, so if you're lucky enough to move forward here, you are in step 5, which is the final rounds. These are also called onsites because they used to be physically on-site and sometimes still are, depending on the type of role you're interviewing for and the collaboration and co-location practices at the company that you're interviewing for. And then they're also called virtual onsites because during COVID, that is how they've been adapted. Typically what these are across all the FAANG companies is 5 interviews. They are either 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 1 hour interviews each. You're generally interviewing with just one interviewer. Very rarely do the FAANG companies use panel style interviews where it's 2-on-1 or 3-on-1. After you complete these interviews, a decision will be made about your candidacy and there will almost never be subsequent interviews. I'll talk about that later when we get into hiring committee, but generally final rounds are actual final rounds at these FAANG companies. So for a program manager, your typical interview splits are going to be 2, maybe 3 interviews that are role-related knowledge and skills. So these are things like, how do you plan and manage projects? How do you future-proof processes? How do you design systems of execution? How do you manage stakeholders? How do you handle risk? How do you handle suppliers or vendors? Those will be covering those multiple role-related knowledge and skill dimensions. And you'll get lots of different questions that each kind of try to tackle one or multiple of those different dimensions. You'll have one that's focused on leadership or consensus building. They may call it lots of different things, but it's really about your ability to influence without authority, move the ball forward, keep people aligned. Your last interview, to round it all out for your 5 interviews, is usually a culture fit type interview. So that can be at Google, we'll call it, sometimes it's called Googliness, and GCA. GCA means general cognitive abilities. There are tons of videos about this on the internet. I personally love GCA interviews the most, both as an interviewer and an interviewee, because you really never know what to expect. And they're really fun because you're kind of partnering with the interviewer. Definitely read up on these if you're interviewing at Google because you will want to know what they are and be able to identify a GCA question when you get one. Program managers tend to take GCA questions and treat them like project planning questions when they are not about project planning. They're actually about cognitive abilities. How much does your brain stretch and how much horsepower is there in the creative, innovative space of your mind as opposed to the systematic, structured space of your mind. So definitely read up on those if you're a program manager because that's something that I see people trip up on often. And then if you're at any other company other than Google, these interview slots tend to be reserved for just like cultural value. So if you're at Amazon, you should already know, if you're interviewing at Amazon, you should already have memorized, have a cheat sheet, know all of the Amazon values. You should be embedding those into every single one of your interviews. Every interview question should include some language that either mirrors or directly steals and uses the Amazon values. It is so important to hit those Amazon values if you're interviewing at Amazon. And if you're interviewing at Meta or Apple, similarly, you need to understand the mission of the company, the cultural values of the company, and embed those in. So those are your 5 on-site, final round, virtual on-site interview types usually. And for the most part, if you're a program manager, you're going to be interviewing with other program managers and then key stakeholders of the job that you would be interviewing for. And those stakeholders may be program managers, they may be operations managers, they may be engineers, they may be product managers, they may be marketers, but they will be people that are closely associated with the role that you're interviewing for. All right, step 5A, we are in the waiting game again. But now you know what's happening during waiting, so you shouldn't be as panicked this time. Don't lose your cool. Know that now you've got 5 people that each have 2 days to get in the interview feedback, plus you've got recruiters taking off Fridays and Mondays, and you probably interviewed on Thursday. So you need to be comfortable with the waiting game. Follow the same rules that we just talked about. Give it 5 business days before you reach out to the recruiter to ask if there's any updates in the process. In between day 0 and day 5, feel free to send thank you notes through the recruiter to your interviewers. The more you personalize those, the better. The more it signals that you really do want this job. And the more research that you put into those, again, it's just signaling the effort that you're putting in. And that is easily correlated to how much you really want the role. It is unlikely, but possible that some of you will go into a team matching process. It is super rare for program managers to go through team matching, so I didn't include it in this video, but I have a sister video that is all about technical program management hiring. And there is a step 6 in that video that talks about what to do and expect if you go into a team matching process next. And this is where you're actually kind of dating teams to understand if there's a mutual fit. And that's actually the final hurdle, if you will, before you get an offer. So if you're going through a team matching process at this point, check out the TPM, the technical program management version of this video. Look for step 6, and that will tell you more about what to expect in that process. All right, so you got your feedback. Generally, the rule of 3 is going to apply here as well. You're going to get 3 different types of feedback after all the interviewers get their feedback in. The first type of feedback is it's a no. Apply again in 6 or 12 months is usually the duration that is communicated. You're rarely going to get feedback. Feel free to ask for it, but it's really hard for large tech companies to give feedback because of the legal vulnerabilities that it creates for them and their hiring process. The second possible outcome is we still need more signal and we want to do a follow-up interview. That's pretty rare. And then the third outcome is congratulations, you passed. The next step is for you to go through hiring committee, and then you'll be potentially getting an offer. Step 6 here, hiring committee. So hiring committee is the word that we use at Google, but it isn't necessarily the same word that's used across all FAANG companies. But I'll explain what this concept is because all of them have some sort of adjudicating body that is responsible for finalizing the offer before it goes out. And so the way that I like to communicate what a hiring committee is, because if you've never interviewed at such a large organization before, you're like, wait, they like me, I like them, why am I not just getting a job? It's kind of like the US government. And you've got your interview team, which is like one branch of the government. And then you've got hiring committee, which is like a totally separate, independent sect of the government. And their jobs are to hold each other accountable. So the hiring committee's responsibility is towards the candidate experience, towards the bar, and making sure the bar is staying consistent across all roles at the company. And so the hiring committee is really there to make sure that the integrity of the hiring process was maintained, to make the final decision about whether you get an offer. And then if you're getting an offer, they make the decisions on what level you get offered. And then of course, that correlates with the compensation package that you're going to get. At some FAANG companies, hiring managers are required to submit a statement of support to the hiring committee. It's a letter that you are not part of creating, but that your experience and your interview performance will contribute to the creation of this. So it's going to be a document that talks about why the hiring manager wants to hire you, why you're uniquely qualified for this role, from your background, from your interview performance, from the things that you've indicated in the interview process. That's not something that you're actually part of. I'm just sharing it with you so that you're aware that is a factor that plays into the timeline, because hiring managers tend to either be really fast at making these or really slow at making these. And so it can result in having a little bit of delay in the process, even if they want to move forward. And so that brings us to our last point about hiring committee, which is that they tend to only meet once a week. This isn't their day job. Their day job is actually being program managers at FAANG companies. And so they only meet once a week to do this adjudication work and to make these final hiring decisions. And so it's possible that your interview corresponds with the day that they just met, and then you're going to have to wait until the next week, or even a couple of days before. It takes time to put together the statement of support. The recruiter has to put together a packet and a bunch of information that helps the efficiency of the hiring committee process. Just be aware there's a whole week plus of potential delay there and putting together that information and ultimately getting the feedback back from the hiring committee. Last thing on hiring committee is that, again, you have 3 possible outcomes here. One is we need more signal. That would result in you going through an additional interview or interviews. Sometimes that signal is actually a leveling signal. Sometimes it's a specific skill that felt like it came up with a little bit more mixed signal or a weak signal from the hiring committee's perspective, whereas the interview team might have felt that it wasn't so mixed. And so the hiring committee always has the right to say, hey, we want to do another interview to confirm. The second outcome is no hire. Even if the team that interviewed you wants to hire you, the hiring committee can veto and decide that you're actually not a great fit for whatever reason. And you will usually not get communicated these reasons. And usually you won't even know that the interview team wanted you, but the hiring committee didn't want to move forward with your candidacy. Of course, the third outcome is the one that all of you want, which is that you got an offer. When the hiring committee does decide to move forward, they put together the leveling, they put together the compensation package, they hand that back to the recruiter, and then the recruiter's job is to let you know that you have an offer. Step 7 is you got an offer. And what's going to happen here is the recruiter is going to email you to set up a time to meet. Some recruiters are very forward and they tell you that you're getting an offer. Some recruiters, and I am one of these, tend to be a little bit more evil, and I write more professional emails where it's just, can we meet? Do you have time? We can meet up. And then you're thinking this could be good news, it could be bad news. I like that to do it that way because you never know what the other person is thinking or experiencing. They might have just gotten another offer from a company they like better or a role they like better. I'm sharing this with you so that you know that your recruiter may tell you up front, or it might kind of come across as a cold email. You just really never know from their email. So just set up the time and be prepared for the conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to expect in the conversation when you're getting an offer, but I want to preempt everything that I'm saying with even the best tennis players have coaches. Even the world's best athletes have coaches. And so I'm biased because I'm the founder of Pocketboard and I believe in the value of mentorship and coaching with every fiber of my being. But I want to tell you, offer negotiation, it's like a turkey trot for you. Your recruiters are like marathon runners. They do this every day, and you run the turkey trot every Thanksgiving. There's going to be a big difference in the athleticism that y'all are going to bring to the table versus your recruiter. And so this is the one time that your recruiter, while they want you to get the job, they definitely want you to take the offer. They are also in a position where they're trying to get you to accept the first offer, and you want to wait beyond the first offer because you want the best offer, and the best offer almost never comes first, okay? So even I, who teach this, always work with someone to help me have an outside perspective, see what's happening from an angle that I myself cannot see or experience, and make sure that I'm getting coached on how to approach these conversations. And the way that I think about approaching an offer negotiation conversation is, one, you need to have the data. You need to know what level you're getting offered at these FAANG companies. There is tons of information everywhere on the internet about what compensation bands are for these roles. You've already asked for compensation bands, but now you can actually look up what other people are saying they get paid in those roles at those companies. Look up the data. So the first thing is data. The second thing is mindset. Coming in with an abundance mindset, coming in with a mindset that you are potentially willing to walk away is very different from coming in from a mindset where you're like, no matter what, I'm taking this. And then the third is practice. Just knowing how to say the things that you're going to say in a negotiation. I used to be very bad at negotiating and feel very unconfident doing it. And so having support as you're practicing and prepping for this, whether it's from the data side, from the attitude and mental side, or from the just nuts and bolts, what do you say when you get asked XYZ question? That is what mentors are for. Okay. So we have mentors on Pocketboard who that is their specialty. That is what they focus on. They are active recruiters at tech companies who want to teach you how to negotiate for the best possible offer. Just to give you a carrot here, the minimum amount that we've helped a candidate negotiate, $30,000 at a minimum annual salary increase just by working with a mentor for a couple of hours. The highest that we've had so far, and we're still trying to push this number up every week, is $70,000 from the initial offer to the offer that they ended up negotiating thanks to the mentorship that they got on Pocketboard per year. Please, please, please think about hiring a mentor to help you with this. Some quick takes from me. One is when they give you the offer, they're going to ask you your reaction. Start with giving them information about why you feel like you're a good fit for the role. Always think about feeding your recruiter fodder that's going to help them when they're trying to negotiate and persuade for you internally. So give them information of something that one of your interviewers said that you went and researched later, or the fact that interviewer number 2 said, I can't imagine dreaming up someone better for the role than you, or even your own perspective. I had a great conversation with interviewer number 3, and we even worked through a plan that would be part of my first 90-day plan when I joined the company in this role. So I can already see myself there. The second tip I have for you here is do not accept the offer. Do not accept the offer right off the bat. Even if you're planning on accepting the offer, don't accept it on this first phone call. And I'm going to explain this to you from a hiring manager perspective, which I have found is the most helpful when people are hesitant to negotiate for themselves. As a hiring manager of program managers, people who are famed for influencing without authority, I need to know that you can negotiate in the workplace. In the interview process, we've asked you questions about negotiating, consensus building, collaborating, but I want to actually see it. Hey, Zorro. I want to actually see you do this in real time. The best way for you to show that you're actually good at negotiating and finding a win-win is to do it when you're negotiating for this job. Sometimes people come to negotiations, and women, I'm looking at you on this one. Women, people of color, people from underestimated communities and underserved backgrounds, I'm looking at you. you're like, I'm actually kind of happy with this offer. It works for me. And like, I don't want to seem greedy. It's not greedy. It's showing me the skill set that you have of negotiating. So please negotiate, okay? The first step in negotiating is not saying yes to the initial offer. And your reaction to them, start by giving them, details about why you think that you're a great fit for the role, why you're still excited about the role and the team and the job. And then let them know that you're going to be thinking about it, and go ahead and set up time to meet again. Usually they'll want to meet with you in 2 to 3 days. In those 2 to 3 days, you will need to gather the data, the mindset, and the practice at handling their questions to be ready for that actual negotiation that's going to happen on the second phone call. Sorry for that slight TED talk on offer negotiation. You can tell I'm very passionate about this because I see the people that we work with every day on Pocketboard leaving things on the table, and it drives me crazy because I'm an optimizer, and because most of the people that we work with are people that are underestimated talent, and I want to see them thrive in their roles and get the best deal possible. Congratulations if you made it this far in the process. You are in very rare air. That actually wraps up our video. If you found this video even the slightest bit helpful, give us a like. It's such a great cheer on to see those likes coming in. If you have any follow-up questions or any topics you want us to dive more deeply into, we answer every comment. And if there is enough there, we'll actually make a new video with a more detailed set of answers to your questions. If you are going through the program manager interview process at any of these companies, and anything that I have said in this video is different from your experience or is exactly the experience you had, please share it in the comments below so that future interview candidates can see that and understand what their process might look like. If you want me or any other Pocketboard mentors to continue creating helpful videos, please subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, and that will allow you to get notified every time we publish a new video so you can have an edge on other candidates with the latest information that we're publishing. And of course, I'm Erika G. You can find tons of videos that I've made on the Pocketboard channel for everything about interviewing FAANG companies or non-FAANG companies. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one as a mentor, you can find me on Pocketboard. I'll put the link to my profile in the description so you can find me easily. Good luck with your interviews. All right. Take 2. Program managers, program managers, program manager, That probably is not gonna make it to TikTok, but you never know. That would be mortifying. Okay. This is the Pocketboard Mentoring Sidekick. So someone asked me if the secrets to interviewing at FAANG companies are what's written on the whiteboard behind me, and they were like, I took screenshots and I zoomed in so many times to try to see what was written, but there's this glare. And I'm like, no, man, that's just my workouts. So there's no secrets to the universe behind me unless you think that the secret to the universe is butterfly sit-ups. Thanks for the comment. I loved it.